coaching clients. Her name is Dr. Alex. She is not getting hundreds of thousands of views on this podcast. She's getting hundreds or maybe thousands, but she is absolutely crushing it with brand partnerships, dude.
I started off with LinkedIn and Twitter, and I had a few thousand followers, but I was generating hundreds of thousands of impressions.
The consistency is super important. If your newsletter doesn't come out when people expect it to come out, you will be easily replaced by somebody else.
It's helpful to be in an industry where there's money in it, right? Because naturally, get your share.
If you've given enough value, you can make a big ask every so often.
It's this three-legged stool. You have to have all of these components. And the buried lead in all this is that you'll actually make more money in the end if you take this approach.
When you look at our shares at our Beehive, how many people have shared this, which is a really important benchmark for me. I mean, the names you see on there, I'm talking like the biggest dealers. And so, they're engaged because they're forwarding your newsletter, right? Like that is what you want to see. And so at the end of the day, if you are selling an ERP for dealers, right? In our industry, it's called a DMS. And that ERP, the lifetime value of that customer is millions of dollars. Why would you not pay tens of thousands, potentially even, hundreds of thousands in order to acquire that customer? Of course you would. It would be stupid not to, which is so, I mean, I think the lesson there is, it's helpful to be in an industry where there's money in it, right? Because naturally, you can, get your share. But at the end of the day, again, it comes back down to, you need to continue creating compelling and engaging content, it's just where I spend most of my time, right? I spend most of my time on creating the most compelling type of stuff. So that's roughly where the average packages go. But again, it really varies all over the map. So surprisingly, there are two incumbents in my space that have been really, they've been trying to just copy many of the things we're doing. And not upstarts, actually incumbents, because again, it's a really tough audience to gain. And so it makes sense that the incumbents would kind of be, kind of chasing us. And you see it you see that they're trying to make their newsletter more like ours, their podcast, their social content. I mean, it's obvious, right? But again, that stuff is all commoditized. And at a certain point, they're going to catch up to us. Yes, we have our own taste and our brand. And I think that, our attention to detail is higher than any competitor. It just simply is. You look at our website, you look at everything. I mean, we really pay attention to the details and the design. The design is really important for us. Our newsletter is beautiful. I take pride in that. We spend a lot of money designing that newsletter. It's bold. It's colorful. It's fun. Right. So cool. So can they technically copy that stuff? I mean, they could. It's not their aesthetic. Their brands don't have personality, but sure, they could. But what they can't copy at the end of the day is our content, right? They can't they can try, good luck, but I should probably say it that way. They can do it, but good luck creating the type of content we're creating at the velocity that we're creating. It's just hard. So can they do it? Yeah, they can. They could technically. But as you know, media is all about consistency, putting in the reps every single day. And so that's our moat, really. Our moat is our ability to execute and continue executing day in and day out and bring in high quality content. Everything else is commoditized. And if it's not, it will be very soon. So, that's kind of where we hang our hat on.
Yeah. I mean, we basically, they operate semi-independently. So, our paid team will be cooking ideas and trying to make it work in paid regardless of what we do in organic. But if I, for some reason, have a piece on organic that does do well, we might rip it direct and try to run it as an ad, or we might just, recut it or slice it in some way and try to run it as an ad. But we're trying to make the product line work on both channels out the gate. And primarily, the organic channels is to let someone know it exists. It's not usually for direct convert, because then you turn your organic into sales too often. And if you do it, yeah, it's just not as fun and enjoyable. The only caveats I guess I'll say to that is if you've given enough value, you can make a big ask every so often, especially if the audience already wants it. And then if you make that ask in a fun and entertaining way, then you have even more license to do it. So when we did, I had seen this viral video, but it's basically a tool for pavers, people who lay bricks, to kneel down easily. And it basically creates an angle, like a right angle or a triangle, to not have your knee hit the ground. And so I bought the tool that day when I saw the video. I was like, I want to make a video about this for gardening and see what people think about it. And my idea in my head was like, okay, number one, it'll probably do well as a piece of content. I think it's fun and enjoyable for our audience. Number two, if it does that well, maybe we can talk to the manufacturer and get some custom ones made for the gardening market, because this was really more of a construction tool. And so it was kind of like a hybrid approach. Like, number one, it should do well and the audience should gain value just from the content itself. Secondary effect would be, if it does well enough, I can potentially make this into a product. It did so well though as a piece of content that we sold out of, like, the country sold out of all of them. Because I think in like 4 or 5 days, that piece of content did like 150 million views, which is just crazy. Like, it's stupid. Like, I was at a volleyball game that weekend, watching the game, and the guy in front of me was watching that video. You know what I mean? It was just so weird. I've never had something go that viral, so I'd never had that experience before. But so that sort of, in a way, that succeeded and failed, because we've never gotten to sell that product. It's just sold out, and that was the demand wave, and so it didn't make sense to kind of chase that down. But it's an interesting example of how this content mixed with commercial stuff can work out. Yeah. So it's hard, because if you think about it, like I was saying, what the biggest categories in the gardening market is live plants, soils, fertilizers, and then maybe seeds. And there's tools and stuff, but think about how many of those recur. The live plants recur, soils and ferts to some degree do, fertilizers maybe more than soils, and then seeds definitely recur. And think about which one of those are easy to sell in direct-to-consumer channels. Literally only one, only seeds. The rest of them, you pretty much need a wholesale relationship to make work. And so there's really only one online recurring revenue category within the gardening market, which would be seeds, which is why we are in seeds, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to sell someone, let's say, a raised bed, and then like keep trying to sell them raised beds forever. Although people tend to taste their way into gardening, like they'll buy one and they'll buy two, then they'll buy four. At some point, your yard is full, though, and so I like seeds. First of all, it's literally the genesis of gardening, so it's very on mission. But number two, it's a lightweight, fantastic product to sell, and people love to buy it, and they're also very brand loyal. To your question, when you like a seed brand, you like a seed brand, and you want to get their catalog and browse their catalog. So usually people have 2 to 3 seed brands that they really like, and they stick with those most of the time. It's just a place, like if you're talking about my personal channel, it's just a place to put up stuff that I need to get out because I like to make content. You know what I mean? That's it. The Epic world has 4 channels. And then this one, this is just my place. I was like, I need a place I don't talk about gardening, and I talk about whatever else I want. I don't publish to it too often. So it's a true, like, whenever type channel, which is a very relieving feeling instead of having to be on a schedule for everything. So yeah, it's just kind of an outlet. Yeah. I mean, I would say, man, it's hard because now I'm like old in this space. So a lot of my advice that worked for me just simply either doesn't exist or would not work anymore. But I guess if I was restarting, I would pick the platform I'm the most comfortable creating in, or the media format I guess I'm the most comfortable in. Is it audio, video, or text? And I would pick the dominant platform for whatever choice that was. And then I'd go all in on that for a while until I kind of like built my sea legs on how to make for that particular format. And then I would start to expand out from there and say, like, okay, well, can I go to, let's say I picked text, right? And I picked X. Okay, cool. I'm doing well on X. Can I now translate that to LinkedIn? And it has to be a translation, as you know, right? You can't just repost because the audience profile is different. Even if it's similar people following you, even their psychographics, your mind's different on LinkedIn than it is on Twitter, right? I do that, and then if you had the ambition to go multimedia, then I would start translating that stuff into the different formats of media. So I might do little audio bites, or I might do short form videos, or this or that. But you don't really need to do all those to do well. It depends on what your business is, right, or what your goal is. Mine is our company mission is we exist to help you grow. So we have to be in every media format that a gardener would ostensibly want to consume on. Otherwise, we're not fulfilling that. So that's why we're on everything. But a lot of businesses don't need that to survive and do well.
I'm never going to make a product for that. I'm never going to make a training program for that. I better go out there and solicit these partnerships and get this in front of my audience, because they're saying that this is like the most active issue in their business. And so that's the sponsors. And then this final bucket of alliances is one that is most probably the scariest for people, which is like, what happens when your audience says, well, I'm working, I'm a solopreneur, brick and mortar location, but I have terrible work-life balance. My relationships are suffering. My marriage is crumbling, my friendships, because I'm not balancing my personal life. Are you going to ever make a coaching program or boot camp for that? Probably not. But you have your friend who has an amazing program, who's a coach for that, a marriage family therapist or whatever it is. Let me get their offer in front of my audience. And so this is the big unlock, which is that it's not about you. It's not about you maximizing the amount of money possible. It's about serving your audience. And guess what? When they finally feel as though they're in a place in their life and their business where they're ready to invest in Ish's services or his course or his coaching or whatever, because their personal life is so much better, they trust you so much more because you were the person that introduced them to your friend. And so I believe that, of course, I'm the sponsorship guy. That's my whole shtick, right? But like, I think it's this three-legged stool. You have to have all of these components: your products, your sponsors, and alliances. And the buried lead in all this is that you'll actually make more money in the end if you take this approach. I think there's a lot of benefits. That is one of them, is for sure, is like diversity of the things that you get to expose your audience to. So I 100% agree that like some people, listen to any podcast, most podcasts, don't we all kind of start to tune out the same, sponsors or ad reads that, we're used to hearing every single episode from this thing. And so keeping it fresh, I think, is another advantage. Let me answer this by telling a story. So one of my coaching clients, her name is Dr. Alex. Okay. And she has a podcast called Digital Pathology Place. Digital Pathology. Okay. She's a doctor, a veterinarian. And she is not getting hundreds of thousands of views on this podcast. She's getting hundreds or maybe thousands. But she is absolutely crushing it with brand partnerships, dude, because think about who's in her audience. It's the lab techs, it's the doctors, it's the people at the medical device companies. And so look at, you're sitting here thinking, okay, here's a pharmaceutical company, here's a biopharmaceutical, a medical device company or whatever. They've got $20 million, $50 million to spend in their marketing budget. How are they going to deploy this marketing capital? It's very difficult. Run Facebook ads? I don't know, maybe, that's kind of hard. Maybe, I guess we're going to run our ad in this prehistoric trade magazine that sits in the doctor's office that no one reads. I guess we'll have to do that because that's what we've always done. Attribution's really, really difficult. Or maybe we could roll out the red carpet for Dr. Alex because she's got the freaking decision makers listening to her super niche podcast.
To be able to be a credible voice in the spaces that I'm operating in opens up so many doors and opportunities. And when I go to DM someone on LinkedIn to want to demo them, SIFC, I'm not some random guy that they have no idea, who I am or what I do. I connect with them, right? And then they'll see my stuff on the feed, and then I'll reach out to them as a little strategy. And so they've been seeing my stuff, and then I reach out, and they're like, "Oh, this is a legitimate person. I've been seeing his stuff." And then the key is you start engaging with people, in the social listening and the insight space, and they're liking my post, they're commenting, and then all of a sudden, like, you're one of them. And I always say that, like, you talk about something on the internet long enough, people start to see you as you are the guy that pertains to that. And so for me, that's become the creator economy. That's been years, right, of doing it. And now, like, leaning into kind of like insights and social listening. That's only been recently. But you set yourself up and you engage with the right people. You start to also elevate in that space. I will say it also helps having the LinkedIn Top Voice badge because it's literally a badge of like verification. And that has been so important because it's like someone will be like, oh, this person who's verified, a top voice, is reaching out to me. But for any creators out there, what is so great about creator-led businesses is that these creators own their distribution and they have this trust and credibility with their audiences. And so I'm not someone that's just like stepping into this space trying to be like, hey, I'm moving in here. It's like, oh no, you live here. Welcome, you're in the community, happy to check out what you're building or maybe I want to get involved and sponsor what you're doing because we're trying to target creators and you seem like the person that has that community.
First of all, find a schedule. I'm glad to hear that, you're kind of like me, you're doing it on a weekly basis. Friday at 7 a.m. is my drop time. I think of it almost like a YouTube channel in that same way that, successful creators will be like, I'm dropping every Friday afternoon or Monday, whatever day it is. So Friday, 7 a.m. The consistency is super important. If your newsletter doesn't come out when people expect it to come out, there are, so many people are writing newsletters now. You will be easily replaced by somebody else. So I think that's one thing. Find a schedule, stick to it. Write. Listen, it's. I feel like it's the same advice that we give creators. Write what you love, but definitely listen to audience feedback. When I first started the newsletter, it was primarily for creators. I was thinking, I'm writing for creators, I'm giving creators advice. Over time, I was doing surveys and, asking questions, going in the comments, talking to people. And it turned out that 70% of my newsletter audience was marketers. A lot of those marketers also identified as creators, but 70% were marketers. And so over time, yeah, I polled, I did a survey. Once I had enough, now I think it was like, I've been writing the newsletter for almost 4 years. It was like maybe end of year 1 or 2, when I polled people and I was like, how do you, what do you consider yourself? And yes, a lot of them considered themselves creators, but 70% of them considered themselves marketers. And so at that point, I very visibly shifted. Okay, it's similar. I'm covering similar material or I'm writing about similar things, but it's through the mindset of or through the lens of how's this going to help marketers versus just how's this going to help creators. And it is a shift. And so I think, again, it's sort of if you have a social channel and you're creating content on social, like you need that Venn diagram of what you love to create, but also what the audience wants. If you don't have an audience for it, it doesn't matter if you're writing the greatest newsletter ever. There needs to be that audience desire for whatever it is that you're putting out there. So figure out what audience you could possibly serve, what content would help them, and then keep checking in and making sure, are the people subscribing actually the people that you were aiming to help? And if it gets to the point, like I said, where it was like 70% marketers or 70%, whatever it is, small business owners, for example, you got to start shifting your content, to resonate with them.
Yeah, so there's a few different buckets. So you nailed it. First is the creator stuff, and I have an audience of about 150K across socials and newsletter, and that's really like personal, sort of personal brand, personal blog. But I'm also talking mostly about the events I host, and I think that's the main reason people follow me. There's a small community of people that is like younger students and younger entrepreneurs who follow me for the actual advice, but it's mostly events driven. We have the sort of events or experience bucket, which is a holding company of different events brands. And so we have the mixers that are 1,000-person parties and events that we host every month. And those are open to everyone. And those tend to be more of like the operator type audience, like the software engineer or the product manager. Yeah, like for things that have an ACV of, a couple $100,000, you can't sell that. You can't. It's very rare to convert that with just one newsletter plug or one tiny event sponsorship. You need repetition over time, and there's probably data out there that supports that. They need to see you and trust you and sort of have the rapport with you over the span of weeks, if not months, to be willing to spend $300,000 with you. So we do events, and then we do like newsletter and LinkedIn. I try not to just do newsletter and LinkedIn, just because our core business is the events. So normally we'll throw in like the news, the internet or the digital placements as a complementary add-on to the package if they've already committed to a bunch of events. Yeah, it's primarily email and word of mouth. I started off with LinkedIn and Twitter, and I would put these lead magnet type things out there where I would say, hey, I'm hosting this event. I would put a picture of a really nice rooftop, which was the actual venue, by the way. And I'd be like, comment if you want to come. Yeah, and that worked so well. And I had a few thousand followers, but I was generating hundreds of thousands of impressions. And recently Twitter has like just not worked for me at all. I think, yeah, and you mentioned something that was interesting, that they're favoring more culturally relevant, topics or things that are more controversial. And I don't, my last post was best coffee shops in New York. I post stuff mostly about New York or my events. And so my Twitter hasn't been performing as well. And so now it's all through email. And I look at the amount of shares on my Luma page. And it's always like I think like 10-20% of the attendees are just through net new shares. So that's our main channel. Luma also has like a event discovery feature, and I think like 5% of people probably find us through that, but it's mostly through my email distribution.